Alright, my name is Aiden Black, and this is my South Africa presentation. Here's the introduction. So this presentation will cover several topics relating to South Africa in detail, mainly its infrastructural setup, major industries, gross domestic product or GDP, power distance, and the current political status of the country. So here's a little bit about South Africa. So as you can guess from the name of the country, South Africa is the southernmost country in the continent of Africa. It was founded relatively recently in 1961. And is known for its stunning landscape, abundance of wildlife, as well as Cape Town, which is a popular tourist city. It's among the most wealthy and developed countries in Africa. And then here's some GDP statistics. As of 2024, the gross domestic product of South Africa is approximately $400 billion. That's a 6% growth from the previous year. The services sector took up roughly 60%. Agriculture was 10%. Industrial sector was about 20%. With the remaining 10% being industry overlap as well as some other smaller sectors. And here's a bit about the general infrastructure. So South Africa has one of the most developed road systems in Africa. The same can be said about the rail systems, which are a massive part of the country's freight transport. Several airlines exist within the country, and a lot of their airline operations revolve around tourism. The country also meets with 3 separate oceans, making the port another vital part of their economy. And then here's some about transportation. So, like most developed countries, access to buses, taxis, and passenger trains is relatively easy. Long-distance bus travel is also available, with the Greyhound company recently establishing itself within South Africa. Both luxury, and budget options exist for intercity rail, and citizens also often travel from city to city by airplane. And here's a bit about the roads. So South Africa has over 750,000 kilometers of roadways. Major highways connect cities like Cape Town, Johannesburg, and Pretoria. Rural roadways also exist, but they're not nearly as well as maintained as urban roadways. Highways are also referred to as national routes rather than interstates or highways, as we call them. Here's a bit about air travel. So air travel in South Africa is modern and reliable. Countless people come through airports like Cape Town International or King Shaka daily. So tourists, vacationers, citizens alike are all among those who use air travel in South Africa. Several different airlines exist within the country, such as South African Airlines, which you can see right here. So railways. South Africa's rail network is mainly managed by Transnet Freight Rail, which is the largest rail service in the country. The majority of its usage is for freight transport, especially for mining operations. As stated earlier, long-distance passenger trains are also used and available. Here's a bit about the ports. So South Africa is bordered by the Atlantic, Indian, and Southern Oceans. Because of this, there's a massive amount of ports surrounding the country. Cape Town, Durban, and Richards Bay are all port cities along all of which are key points for trade routes, telecommunications, and internet. So you can see by this graph, it's steadily going up, especially once you hit about maybe 2010, it almost doubled, and then it just kept going up from there. So similar to other categories listed, South Africa has the best telecommunications and internet systems in Africa. Widespread mobile coverage is available, as well as major fiber optic networks and growing internet accessibility. However, there is still a major gap between the communications infrastructure of the urban areas and the rural areas. So housing and water systems. There are extravagant housing options in cities like Cape Town. There's a huge quality of life difference between cities and rural parts of South Africa, though. So rapid urbanization in the last few decades is a major reason for this, leaving the lower and middle classes facing housing crises. Water scarcity is also common in rural areas because South Africa is pretty much a desert. So, major industries. Mining is the backbone of South Africa's economy. Other things like the automotive industry and manufacturing industry play a big role as well. Agriculture is also a big contributor to the GDP, as well as trade and transportation. The energy sector is also a growing contributor, with Africa having one of the biggest coal mining industries in the world. So here's a bit about mining. South Africa is one of the biggest producers of gold, platinum, diamonds, iron, coal, and chromium. Mining accounts for a major portion of the overall exports, with minerals being sent to places like China, the United States, and several countries in Europe. The mining business is still booming but faces challenges. Environmental concerns are a major part of those concerns, as well as labor strikes. Here's a bit about the agriculture. So maize, which is corn, citrus, fruits, sugarcane, beef, and wool are a few of the main agricultural exports in South Africa. Both commercial and subsistence farming are heavily practiced, with commercial dominating exports and subsistence being mostly employed for local markets. Tourism and technology. So, South Africa has two newer sectors that have been seeing a rapid increase in growth over the last couple of decades. South Africa has seen a huge rise in popularity as a tourist attraction due to its recent advancements, as well as its natural beauty, making it a comfortable place to stay with vast amounts of nature to explore. The tech sector is also booming due to urbanization, and Cape Town is often compared to Silicon Valley in California. Here's a bit about the government structure. So South Africa is a constitutional democracy. Its setup is surprisingly similar to the United States, having the same three branches of government: executive, legislative, and judicial. Primary elections are held every 5 years rather than 4, and there are provincial governments as well. So Nelson Mandela was the first president to be elected in 1994, and the current president is Cyril Ramaphosa. Here's a bit about the power distance. So on Hofstad's scale for power distance, South Africa has scored a 49, which is pretty moderate. That means that the balance between freedom and respecting authority is pretty much 1-to-1, compared to the United States, which scored a 40, which is lower, making it have a bit more emphasis on challenging authority. Here's a bit about the issues and the future outlook. So South Africa is a relatively prosperous country, but no country is without its issues. Slow GDP growth, high unemployment rates, inequality between classes, political corruption, scandals, high violent crime rates, a struggling education system, environmental problems are all the issues that plague the country, especially in the rural areas, as I've mentioned before. With all that being said, there's still time for improvement, and it has a strong potential for continued growth and recovery. Just my conclusion. So in summary, South Africa has a very strong economy, vibrant culture, as well as a vastness of natural beauty. Every country faces problems, and South Africa is no different. With some careful economic adjustments and political planning, it could transform from a nation of contrast into a nation of unity. And then here are my sources.